Kick back and relax. You're watching Logan Underwood ASMR. The video will begin shortly. Let's get some sleep. Welcome back. Last time we left off, we were finishing up the Book of Water. Now we move on to our next chapter. The Book of Fire. The Book of Fire describes the importance of knowing the difference between using a bamboo practice sword and a real sword in combat. Although technique is extremely important and must never be overlooked, there is a tendency among most would-be warriors to concentrate only on the development of their craft through skills developed with certain moves. Would-be warriors who use only the refinement of their profession and brag through their motions do not understand strategy. They overlook the all-important aspect of spirit, thinking that it will come to them without additional work. To release the spirit, one must accentuate the work with meditations of the heart and the soul. Not doing so is the same as performing music note for note, with no emphasis on the feeling of the particular piece being performed. And so most warriors only perform tricks. The way of the warrior is filled with soul and feeling. Without it, the warrior is essentially dead, even though he may appear to be very strong. The only way you can understand the truth about killing an enemy in combat is by killing an enemy in combat, because this may be difficult to do whenever you may want to. Proper practice is essential. Only by studying actual tactics and being able to determine an enemy's strength can you actually understand the meaning of life and death in war. You must train constantly with the attitude of killing the enemy. When this attitude is fully developed, potential enemies will not wish to enter into combat with a warrior they sense has the resolve and conviction of one with no concern for the enemy's well-being. In general, they cannot know the truth of the matter. It is foolish to get into scuffles with an enemy and not attack with a killing resolve. In order to understand life and death, you must actually be in a situation where the possibility of death exists. There is a constant need to study one's weaponry and the methods to be used when real combat occurs. Regardless of this, you must strive for this perfection of your soul by thinking in terms of actually killing enemies when you are practicing. Through constant application of your training skills, you will come to understand the value of a particular technique if you practice with full resolve and use the methods of visualization in your training. You should practice wearing your full suit of armor in order to learn the true feeling of combat. You can become a master of strategy through thorough and constant practice. By seeing into a particular technique, you will learn where and when it can best be used, even though you are not using it for a real purpose at the time. Training enables you to see deeply into the motivations for your warriorness as well as into the development of your abilities. In this way, you learn your craft. Anyone who truly wishes to master strategy can master strategy. Through constant practice, you become free from your own ideas of what and how things should work. When you learn a technique and apply your soul to it, you will find that the technique will reveal to you the manner in which it must be used to your personal advantage. This applies to combat without weapons as well. In your everyday dealings with men, you will find a special ability that enables you to control situations and maintain your own position without having to submit yourself to the whims of another. However, it should be pointed out that you yourself must have the courage of your convictions and the courage to act on your convictions. Without this courage and this ability to act, you will become another man's pawn and can easily be defeated. This is the only way to learn my principles of strategy. Through constant training, you will eventually be seen as a man of incredible power and spiritual power. The place from which you fight. Use everything to your advantage at all times. In outdoor fights, try to keep the sun behind you. In that way, you maintain an advantage by diminishing the opponent's capacities for sight and perception. When fighting indoors, keep a door on avenue or of escape behind you. Sometimes you will be overwhelmed and must have an escape route. Always be in a position where you can look down upon the enemy. In real unarmed situations, you may keep any area free to allow you the possibility of escape if necessary. There is nothing wrong with escaping from combat if you are overpowered and honestly cannot win the fight. Get out and make sure you have provided a means to get out. Seek out the place of advantage whenever you enter a new area. The same applies to seating arrangements around a table. Always seek to occupy the seat with the most advantage. He who has proper position controls the situation. If it is not available to you, then get as close to it as you can, either on the left or right, depending upon how your perceptions direct you. Whether fighting an enemy armed or unarmed, keep him on the defensive, chase the enemy with your body and your spirit. This is excellent strategy. You can easily open targets for yourself with a little effort, but then you must have the courage to go in and kill the enemy without delay. You must be totally resolved when you are fighting, otherwise you will easily lose. By constantly creating difficulties for the enemy, you will force him to deal with more than one thing, giving you the advantage in killing him swiftly. When you have the enemy in an awkward position, do not let him regain his composure and possibly defeat you. When the enemy is confused, you must go in for the kill. This strategy must be constantly studied. 3 strategies to control the enemy. The best way is to commence with your attack, and in this way keep him off balance and on the defensive. The second way is to step back from his attack and draw him to you. The third way is, when you both attack together, to be stronger in spirit. There is nothing else besides these 3 methods. You either take the lead, hold him off and then take the lead, or force the lead at any given time. This is truly the essence of fighting. Utter resolve is necessary when you are fighting an enemy. In order to beat him, you must control the situation, regardless of the method you use. If you do not control the enemy will control you. The first control of the enemy. By keeping the pressure on the enemy, you will keep him constantly in a defensive posture. It is essential that you remain calm when initiating an attack. Your basic attitude should be of wanting to overwhelm him and unsettle his spirit. This will permit you to control the situation and make good your attack, the purpose of which is to destroy the enemy. You may appear strong and then deliver your cut through guile. It does not matter how you do it as long as you understand why you are doing it. Change your rhythm and change your timing if necessary. You may appear unresolved, but when you approach the enemy, you must charge in with utter calm and purpose. You may wish to send the enemy a message implying your superior strength. When the enemy realizes his position, quickly go in for the kill. There are times when, although you are prepared to go right through the enemy, you lay back momentarily and then, without warning, leap in and through. The second control of the enemy. Do not let the enemy overwhelm you with his apparent strength and technique. You must remain calm at all times. In this way you can control the attack. When the attack comes, be sure to misdirect the aim of the enemy. As an example, feint left and strike from the right. The other way is to sense the attack and, at the very moment of the enemy's movement, charge in with greater strength, power, and resolve. The third control of the enemy. Never be overwhelmed by the enemy. You can assure this by keeping your spirit tall and your resolve strong, regardless of how the enemy approaches. Your main thought should be to cut him down. Should the enemy attack strongly and calmly, you must become one with the attack, and through superior resolve cut him down swiftly. Without constant practice, it is hard for words to convey the true meaning of the thought. To come to understand something that appears obvious, you must constantly probe into the meaning of the words. You must unceasingly practice the techniques. When you think you understand something, you have made only the first approach to it. To further clarify your understanding, you must read and read again. Each time you read and practice a thing, the spirit of the thing itself will reveal more of itself to you. Study is a lifelong understanding. That is why it is said that the warrior first understands being a warrior when he no longer concerns himself with being a warrior. The main thing to understand is that you must have no hesitation in killing the enemy. To suffocate the enemy with a pillow. What is meant by suffocating the enemy with a pillow is never permitting him to gain an advantage over you in any way. You can be sure the enemy is thinking likewise. Either you lead the enemy or he will lead you. You must come to understand the value in this concept. You must also understand that the reason an enemy is fighting you is because the enemy thinks that he will defeat you. You must react instantly to an enemy's attack. This can only be accomplished after thorough and diligent practice. If you understand this principle, then you will be able to sense an impending attack and react properly by killing the enemy before he kills you. The main thrust of my entire teaching is training and contemplation on the way of the warrior. It is the only thing that should be in your life. It may appear that there is no room for anything else, but the reverse is true. When you are committed to a particular thing, everything else falls into place because you are not permitting yourself to be sidetracked by another's whims. The strength of your courage to act on your convictions is most important in this regard. It is very hard to devote your life to something and you may not have anything else appear that provides you with the simple pleasures of life. On the other hand, if you pursue your perfection through a particular way, then that will give you the pleasure of the spirit of the thing itself. These things are hard to understand when only written in words. You must follow through with hard study, hard practice, and immense belief in your own ideal. You have chosen to be a warrior for your own reasons. Regardless of the way you have chosen, if you truly believe in the principles of what you are doing, you will be able to attain perfection. It does not come overnight. When you understand this, you will be a master of strategy. Crossing the ravine. Having the courage to enter into combat when the time and place are right is what I mean by crossing the ravine. It is essential to have the courage of your convictions and the courage to act upon them. This is the strategy of crossing the ravine. If you are always aware of your surroundings, then you will always be able to cross at the correct time. However, men are not perfect in any aspect of their lives, no matter the amount of time, effort, and energy they put into their search for perfection. The virtue of perfection is that it is always just beyond a man's reach. This is good. If perfection were attainable, then it would have no value. There would be no reason to pursue it. In this light, always know the strengths and weaknesses of yourself and your enemy. Always be aware of the easiest way to accomplish something. Do not strive to do something difficult because you seek favor in the eyes of others. Knowing the right time. How do you feel about going into combat? Is your spirit correct at all times? Are you feeling strong? Do you feel slightly uneasy? It is important that you understand yourself with regard to the possibility of fighting. Another consideration is that the enemy has these thoughts as well. The better you know the opponent, the better equipped you are for battle. The skill you need to win a battle lies in knowing the enemy's strengths and weaknesses. You achieve this through constantly practicing with the attitude of destroying the enemy, knowing where you are at all times, and understanding your relationship to the battle. Knowing the time means that you can instantly assess a situation and act accordingly. When you have acquired the correct attitude, you will be able to easily beat the enemy because you will be truly prepared to go into combat with an understanding of all the skills and abilities that you and your opponent possess. To step on the enemy's sword. It is difficult to attack the enemy if you are busy preparing your weapons for combat. You must come to understand the importance of attacking while the enemy is attacking, and in doing so, step on his sword, making him lose balance and advantage. You must go directly into the attack and beat the enemy before the enemy has the chance to realize what is happening. This is the classic strategy of misdirection. Would you not want the enemy to stop and think about what he was doing when he starts to attack? Of course he would, and therefore it is foolish not to think that the reverse is true. As soon as you sense the possibility of an attack, you must react immediately with your own attack to kill the enemy, or you will give him the chance to regather himself and come at you again. You absolutely must commit yourself to overwhelming the enemy by instantly retaliating against him. While the enemy is attempting to attack you and you have the attitude of stepping on him, you can belittle the enemy when you see his strengths and weaknesses. You must step on him with your body and your spirit to continue on to win the fight by killing him, collapsing the enemy's spirit. Depending upon the amount of conviction you have in regard to the enemy, you can easily get him to collapse under the pressure of your attack. You do this by forcing him to make unnecessary moves, thereby throwing off his timing and rhythm. Once you have made it necessary for the enemy to regather himself, he is at his most vulnerable. It is at this moment that you immediately go for the kill with nothing else on your mind except destroying the enemy. Go after the enemy with a resolute spirit. You must stay after the enemy or he will have a chance to reposition himself, possibly making an even stronger second attack. When you go for the kill, go for the kill. Do not relinquish your position through any weakness on your part. To do so is deadly and will cost you the battle. Becoming the enemy. Denigrate the enemy constantly and with great spirit. Do not acknowledge the possibility that the enemy is stronger than you are. Do not accept the possibility that the enemy is smarter than you are in any way whatsoever. If you are aware of the way of the warrior, you are aware of the way of the warrior. The way of the warrior does not permit you to accept an inferior position to anything. You are either the best or you are not the best. If you are, then you will win. If you are not, then you will lose. There is nothing to argue about here. You must also remember your level of understanding. This falls into the area of knowing yourself as well as knowing the enemy. To become the enemy, see yourself as the enemy of your enemy. If you understand strategy, you will know how to beat the enemy. Think this over until it is clear in your mind. To release the grip of 4 hands. When you and the enemy are of equal spirit and skill and neither of you can get the other to move, there is a standoff. This can result in deadly consequences. It is called the grip of 4 hands. It is foolish to stand there toe-to-toe and not be able to get the job done, which is to kill the enemy. If an impasse occurs, sneak something else into the combat and win decisively. Combat must never be a thing of pride or stubbornness. If you must change your method of attack, do so without hesitation. Change your timing, change your rhythm, change your approach. It does not matter who is stronger or who is faster. What matters is that you attain your goal. The way of the warrior is to slay the enemy by cutting him down without delay. You must have utter resolve in order to do this, and you must constantly sharpen your skills. Eventually, you will understand the way to do things effectively and efficiently without stress or strain. Mislead the enemy, and then slay him with an unorthodox technique. To move as a shadow. Sometimes you cannot go straight into the enemy, and it is necessary to feint just prior to attacking strongly. If the enemy is very strong, he may not show his spirit. Because of this, it is essential that you make a misdirecting motion to open up the enemy, forcing him to show you his strengths and weaknesses. You must constantly be aware of your surroundings and be able to capitalize upon them. If you make an opening, then you absolutely must go for it, or it is a waste of the spirit of the thing. If you practice otherwise, after a while you will be unable to take advantage of an enemy's weaknesses and become ineffective as a warrior. You will certainly lose the way. Study this carefully. To suffocate a shadow. What is meant by suffocating a shadow is to understand the enemy's strengths and easily see through his intentions. If you can see what the enemy is planning, then how can you fail to defeat him instantly? Only by failing to take advantage of the situation can you, in turn, be defeated. You must train constantly to understand the reasoning behind this strategy. There is nothing mystical in this strategy. If you show the enemy that you know what he is planning, he can be forced to change his attitude to one that is favorable to you. When you see his change in attitude, immediately thrust in with a killing strike. Beat his timing with your timing. Beat his approach with your approach. Control the situation at all times by being aware of your surroundings. When you study the way, it will come to you that everything I am speaking of is practical and functional. Problems occur when you do not understand the true way of the warrior and fail to act upon opportunity. To impress your attitude. Attitudes are contagious. To impress your attitude on the enemy is to force them to think in terms that are to your advantage. When you understand your own abilities, you are able to pass them along to others in the same way a teacher can pass along correct and incorrect ideas and teachings. If you show the enemy that you are agitated, then he may become calmer and then at that instant attack with the utter resolve and conviction that will kill you. You must have success in your heart and mind in order to know whether information is true or false. If you cannot do this, then you must take the time to study further if you are so inclined. Do not be impressed by the enemy's attitude. Remain calm even if he starts to attack. If you do not follow yourself, then you will certainly follow someone else. The whole idea of warfare is to beat the enemy. The strength and courage of your convictions is what will carry you through every time, regardless of the situation. You must understand this. Without hard study, how can you ever hope to acknowledge yourself as your own supreme master? This comes with long practice, study, and devotion to the heart. The spirit of the thing itself will reveal this to you. When you have imparted your attitudes to someone else, that person effectively becomes your follower. This is the way of the warrior. When you do not discern the real reality of the truth, then you become foolish. Do not rush yourself in your learning and do not expect to know what the master understands. In the case of an enemy, it is important that you control that person or you can be beaten in battle. Forcing loss of balance. A warrior can lose his balance because of danger, surprise, or difficulty. When you attack, you should do so with no warning of any kind. Once your enemy loses his balance, your attack will be virtually impossible to stop. If you stand strong and rigid, your spirit will be very easy to read and you will be beaten because you are not flexible. The same is true of being too loose. Flexibility is a very important attitude. Things will not always go your way regardless of your practice and your attempts to define your own existence. Therefore, how can you always maintain strictly one posture? In large-scale combat, attack where the enemy is not expecting you to. Likewise, in one-to-one combat, appear to be one thing and then attack as another. Never give the enemy a chance to see your true spirit. It is easy to lead a horse when you know how to hold the reins. When your enemies are deceived, you will be able to control any situation because they are expecting one thing and you strike at them with another. It is the same with feigning a punch and throwing a kick. Scaring the enemy. The difference between a half-hearted scream intended to scare the enemy off and a resolute shout is the difference between bragging and making a commitment to attack with the intent to kill. If you constantly scream, then you will be perceived as a screamer and not a doer. However, if you maintain a strong and powerful presence and then commit yourself to the attack with a forceful shout, you will scare the enemy and win easily. You win with resolute power and not with false appearances. When you have scared the enemy and his rhythm is confused, you can easily go in for the kill. Use your voice, your body, and your sword to scare him. To frighten the enemy means to make him lose his balance, providing you with an opening into his defenses when he is easily slain if you have the mind to kill him. To flood in. If the fight develops to the point where neither you nor the enemy are able to make the killing strike, you will have the advantage if you suddenly change your technical strategy and proceed relentlessly with your attack. This is called flooding in. To back off and try to regain your composure gives the enemy the important opportunity to do likewise. And then starts all over again. When you are in a fight, you are not in a contest to see who can outlast the other in a standoff. This is why you absolutely must train incessantly to develop the proper spirit that will enable you to continue attacking even under dire circumstances. It is not a question of your technical ability, but it certainly is a matter of your desire to win with the spirit of the warrior, something you can attain only when you have acknowledged the way as the true reality for you and you alone. To chip away the edges. Sometimes you must make sacrifices in your attack in order to weaken the enemy and chip away at his defenses. If you find that it is difficult for you to penetrate strong armor, then go to the areas where the armor is weak, and you will eventually break through. There are weak spots in all armor. If you continue to chip away at the weak spots in the enemy's armor, he will eventually weaken and lose balance. The reason there are weak spots in armor is because there are places that have to be open in order to provide flexibility in the enemy's movements. Go to these areas and slowly whittle him down. When you have the opportunity to go in for the kill, strike with absolute conviction. Do not hesitate. Destroy the enemy. Confusing the enemy. Confusing the enemy is achieved by forcing him to constantly redirect his efforts. With proper feints and thrusts, you can get the enemy thinking about where the attack will be coming from. Causing confusion in the enemy means making him unable to concentrate on his attack, permitting you to come in with a well-executed killing strike. I have spoken before about feigning and striking, misdirecting the enemy's thoughts, forcing him to think the wrong thing, and I will continue to repeat it over and over again. It is essential that you control the enemy and make slaying him a simple thing to do. You should be starting to understand what being a warrior is all about by this time. You must be fully resolved to kill the enemy by any means. You must practice constantly to understand these principles until they become second nature. The warrior attitude is very simple. Focus your mind on your goal. Constantly strive to attain perfection, and do not allow yourself to be sidetracked. Think only of winning. You must maintain your own ideals and study properly, or you will be sure to lose the way. Three fierce shouts. There are only 3 times when you can scream fiercely in combat: before, during, and after. Shouting and screaming are the same as long as they fulfill their purpose, which is to terrify the enemy. At the beginning of a battle, you should shout to unsettle the enemy. During the battle, you should shout during each attack to maintain your own resoluteness of spirit. After you've slain the enemy, you should shout to indicate your winning resolve to honor the spirit of the thing itself. You should practice with a strong inner to outer shout at all times, as loud and as forcefully as you can. Never shout before or after a particular technique is executed, but rather at the moment you are making the strike. This helps to maintain rhythm. The shout and the strike are not 2 different things. They are both parts of the same thing. Think this through. It is most important to understand. When breathing, concentrate on pulling air into the lower abdominal area to develop a powerful source of energy, and never hold back on your shout for any reason. This will build up internal stress that can steal power away from you. On the other hand, do not always go around shouting, because this will make you seem to have no control over what you are trying to accomplish with your shout. Always shout when you go into an attack. Always shout when you are defending an attack prior to reversing the situation, and always shout in victory after you finish killing the enemy. In this way, you will be able to quickly relax from the tension of battle. To move with the enemy. When you go into the attack, you are essentially telling the enemy that you don't think very highly of his spirit. This is a very powerful attitude and must be developed carefully from much practice and technical ability. When you have this attitude, it is obvious to the enemy and he will react with hesitation and confusion. In large group fighting, you must constantly maintain the attitude of attack without showing any indication of retreat, regardless of the situation you are in. No matter what the enemy attempts to do not give him a moment's rest. Do not forget that actual combat is extremely fast and demands that you act and react without thinking. Moving with the enemy means not permitting him to regather his thoughts when in retreat. When you permit the enemy to regather himself, you are releasing your control of the situation, allowing the enemy a chance to defeat you. To crush the enemy's body and spirit. Crushing the enemy's body and spirit means you degrade and humiliate him the instant before going in for the kill. Your concentration upon destroying the enemy must be intense and single-minded. What is the sense in fighting if you do not go in for the kill immediately? Any hesitation is foolish and lends itself to boasting. This can get you killed. When you see weakness in the enemy's armor, go at it and do not stop the attack until the enemy is dead. Otherwise, he may recover and be able to regather his thoughts and spirit and turn the tide of battle against you. When you go for the kill, kill. Without mercy. Your spirit must be enormous. Think this through carefully. The moon and stars. What is meant by the moon and stars is that although both are in the sky, they are 2 different things. The sky is the attack, and the moon and stars are the methods to be used. There should be no thought about using only one method or the other. You attack with a technique and it does not work. You try it again and it still does not work. Switch. You must never rely on only one particular attitude to get a job done. The enemy may be prepared for this technique in a way that you may not have anticipated, so it is indeed foolish to try to continue with it. When you change your technique in the midst of battle, you are essentially becoming better able to kill because your spirit is not being forced into any one position. Reaching into the abyss. Reaching into the abyss means that you must always beat the enemy in both body and spirit. When you have merely beaten the enemy superficially, he may still be able to regain composure and regather his thoughts, thereby strengthening his spirit to beat you. At times, it may be difficult for you to continue with your attack when the enemy is not yet beaten in body and spirit, but it is precisely at this time that you must reach into the abyss and bring yourself to the point where you are able to totally destroy the enemy. By reaching into the abyss of yourself, You are able to reach into the abyss of the enemy and slay him properly and with the correct execution of purpose. If you permit the enemy to regain composure, then he will certainly will attack again. To reach into the abyss of the enemy is to halt any additional attempts on the enemy's part to continue the fight. All attacks must therefore be executed with great resolve. This is accomplished only through practice and meditation on the way of the warrior. To start again. In practice, one should consider the possibility of being unable to beat the enemy with whatever means you have been using. This can and does happen. Starting again means to come to an impasse in your efforts to kill the enemy, but then immediately abandoning your approach by taking another strategy, refreshing your spirit and starting again. When you have to change your spirit while in combat, you must do so without stopping the flow of battle. In order to enable yourself to change your approach, you must constantly practice all sorts of variations of on the same attack. In this way, you will be able to change in the middle of a fight. Snake's head, snake's tail. Sometimes both spirits in a fight can become entangled and nothing seems to work. Think of strategy as being both a snake's head and a snake's tail. Never permit yourself to become entangled in the small points of combat. Expand your spirit and see both large and small. Do not become stricken with a single-minded attitude. This is fatal. You must be able to function flexibly within the structure of the one thing you are doing. You must understand that there is more than one path to the top of the mountain. However, you must also realize the importance of staying within the bounds of the way you are traversing. Only then can you truly understand the need to be aware of other attitudes. Commanders know the enemy troops. Who is it that controls the battle? Is it you or is it the enemy? That the commander must know the enemy troops is the vital aspect of my strategy. Whether in one-man battles or large group battles, you must understand the enemy. If the commander knows the spirit of the enemy, he can easily control them and quickly beat them. To win with ease, you must maintain control over the enemy's actions. Not doing so permits the enemy to control you. If neither you have an understanding of the way, the fight is meaningless and the outcome will be governed by luck. The winner also being the loser, regardless of the physical outcome because of the cause of the battle. You must control the fight by possessing a greater spirit than that of your enemy. Understand the strategy and master it. Releasing both holds. What is meant by releasing both holds is that the warrior does not depend on anything but himself to beat the enemy. Do not rely on any particular weapon. Posture and attitude can often win battles. Embody the spirit of winning by having the spirit to win. It is not always necessary to go into physical combat to win a fight. Sometimes you can win by your presence alone. Other times you can win simply by letting the enemy know your intentions. Think this through very carefully. It is the essence of strategy. The body and spirit of stone. When you truly understand the way, you can take any form that you want to. It is almost as if you had developed miraculous powers. You can become as light as a feather, as fluid as water, or as stiff as a board. Regardless of the form you take, once you have understood my strategy, you cannot be beaten by one man or 10,000. Your attitude, no attitude, cannot be stirred except from within. Once you have understood my strategy, you will be a warrior to be reckoned with. Thoughts about my Book of Fire. This book can be considered a path to spiritual understanding for the warrior who truly wishes to understand the way of the warrior. My heart and soul have been devoted to the way of strategy ever since I was a young man. I have constantly studied ways to train my hands and eyes. Through constant practice, I have come to understand the spiritual aspects of my strategy. When I watch men from other schools and listen to them talking about their theories, I can tell they haven't the slightest idea of what my strategy is about. They prefer to act out their techniques and think they accomplish things without proper practice. These men are fools. They try to impress their non-understanding upon the uninitiated. More and more men are practicing this way, and that is why the true way is becoming meaningless and will eventually be lost to all men except through my teachings. The only thing of importance in the way of strategy is the willingness and ability to truly defeat the enemy in actual combat with a long sword. If you understand what I am telling you in these pages, you will never to lose to anyone. You will always win. So ends the Book of Fire. The Book of Wind. Kaze. Strategy demands that you know the difference between yourself and others. The Book of Wind discusses the prevalent attitudes among other schools. In order for one school to be compared to another, both must exist. Each school has its good points and its bad points. Some schools use the attitudes of strength, some schools lean towards only one or two types of techniques, and some schools rely on a constant expansion of the number of techniques a warrior uses. The main idea of my school is that it is based on the development of the way through an expression of the spirit, techniques notwithstanding. I want to clearly explain the good and bad points of other schools. My school is different. I care not for the dressings of other uniforms or the growing of small trees, although these things have their place. If the school is primarily interested in building up a clientele and displays the trophies won at tournaments, it gives the student the wrong idea about the way of the warrior. Essentially, such a school is trying to sell its wares to the public by using the longsword as a means to accumulate wealth. This is absolutely not the way of the warrior. You must understand that if you are to develop your spirit in the proper manner, the spirit of the thing itself revolts against this type of thinking and reveals itself falsely to the practitioner who believes that showing off is the essence of strategy. To be a warrior is one of the most painstaking callings you can choose in this life. Combat is not a game, it is life and death. It simply cannot be otherwise. It is not merely to insist upon proper carriage of the body and false brandishing of weapons and the spirit. For while it is obvious that carriage and technique are important, they are not important enough to win fights of a mortal nature. The spirit must be cultivated. If it is not, a tragic shortcoming of awareness in the warrior will result. It is important to understand the reasons and philosophies of other systems in order to truly benefit from my own. I do not hesitate to point these things out to you. Without comparison, you have no reference point with which to judge for yourself and decide how to properly develop your own self. You should study the ways of others to reinforce your own understanding of yourself. Constantly reevaluate yourself. Schools that use an extra longsword. Other schools, because they teach a method that relies on distance between themselves and the enemy, are generally unable to close in on the enemy itself easily. They are afraid of going into the enemy and defeating him with one stroke. They think the length of their weapon can offer them additional security in combat, yet the extra length only hinders their resolve. This alone makes them weak. They are weak, and if they fought someone from my Ichi school, they would very simply be closed in on and defeated. Fighting from a distance without the advantage of strategy prevents the warrior from becoming one with his true self. Fighting this way separates the body and the spirit and is therefore not effective in fights to the death. Certainly it is advantageous to have the edge in distance or speed, but without proper understanding of strategy, these so-called advantages become weapons that can be used against you. If you truly understand strategy, then you simply do not need advantages as such. You cannot rely on your weapons alone, though you must be able to wield them thoroughly, applying their nature with the correct execution and form. Your resolve must be intense and your courage steadfast. You must go into the attack in order to win the fight. This is the way. A short sword can easily beat an extra long sword. Essentially, the weapon in and of itself is meaningless without the proper application of its virtues by the warrior. Keep in mind that there are martial arts that have been developed to provide unarmed self-defense against a warrior wearing armor and wielding a sword. An unarmed warrior can beat an armed warrior if my strategy is understood. So again, it is the development of the spirit that carries you through battle and makes you victorious. When a warrior uses an extra long sword, it is difficult for him to come in close and dispatch the enemy swiftly. If a man is unable to function because of his choice of weapon, then he is easily defeated. This does not mean that you should disregard the virtue of an extra long sword. Everything has its value, even if it is not apparent to you. You must always be prepared to deal with every situation, regardless of how you are equipped. This means with a long sword, the short sword, no sword, or an extra long sword. My personal preference is for the long sword. It is important to understand the differences in weapons and the places they can be used. Even so, It is not altogether impossible for someone with an extra long sword to be able to do exquisite battle in an appropriate place. Consider this possibility. Being aware of the conditions of others does not automatically make you superior. Circumstances being equal, the winner of the fight is still the one with the most resoluteness. It is essential for a student on the path of the warrior never to close his mind to the possibilities of other possibilities. The strong sword spirit and the weak sword spirit in other schools. This passage is one of the most important parts of the entire 5 rings. It is also one of the most difficult concepts of strategy to understand and to come to realize. Your strength is not your own, nor is your speed. Forcing yourself to cut more strongly than is necessary will result in a possible loss of control of your weapon. Attempting to strike overly fast can also cause you to lose your balance. Strategy is based on quickness and not speed, power, not strength. In practice, you must remember to attack naturally. In developing technique, you must practice naturally. It is constant practice that will make you unbeatable in combat, whether it is with one man or on a large scale. The true spirit of the thing itself always knows exactly what it has to do to protect the vehicle that is expressing itself through. Who cares how strong you are anyway? Someone you're trying to impress? If you continue on in this thinking, you will lose the meaning of the way of the warrior, which is never easy to attain in the best of cases. So why would you want to jeopardize yourself by showing off? You only have to make sure that you kill the enemy before the enemy kills you. That is your function. It is the function of the thing itself to perform the technique in accordance with what is really necessary to destroy the enemy. This very simple truth is one of the hardest aspects of learning the way of the warrior. Total non-commitment to yourself, only commitment to the way. In combat, you are not in a contest of strength, and you are not in a race. You are there for the only purpose there is to be in combat: to kill the enemy. Showing extra strength indicates weakness in your technique. It also shows a lack of control on your part because you are depending on something outside of your true self. Your own preconceived ideas of what being strong means is not the way of the warrior. That is why you see the older masters able to defeat everyone in the school with what appears to be no effort. The important thing to remember here is not to rely on anything other than your true spirit and the skill that you have developed through constant practice without the benefit of impressing anyone while you are practicing. The way insists that you learn to use the enemy's strength as your own. The only reason a warrior is alive is to fight, and the only reason a warrior fights is to win. Otherwise, why be a warrior? It is easier to count beads. The importance of the long sword over the short sword. Superior warriors have no preference for using a long sword or a short sword. A sword is used to strike down an enemy. Warriors can use any weapon they choose if they understand my strategy. It is also to be understood that using only a short sword means that you are waiting for an unguarded moment in your enemy before attacking. This is not good because it is merely a defensive posture and does not fully realize the true meaning of strategy. You are waiting for the opportunity to be offered to take the initiative. Using a short sword means you are going into the enemy's defenses too closely, and you may not be able to handle multiple attackers. The short sword will also cause you to become entangled with the enemy. To constantly be on the defensive means that you are weak in your resolve, and that you do not truly understand the way of the warrior. The attitude at all times is to go into the attack. To do this, you must properly be prepared both mentally and physically. This includes understanding your weaponry. To continuously fend off an attacker without the resolution to kill him is a great waste of time, effort, and energy. You must remember this. You are not there to play, and you are not there to show off. You are there to kill the enemy, or as many enemies as is necessary. If you constantly practice with the spirit of killing the enemy, you will never have to be concerned with the methods of other schools. It is best to understand the proper use of the longsword. To win in fights, you must control the enemy and not necessarily rely on your weapons so much as on your intelligence. You must chase the enemy around and strive to confuse him by making him lose his balance. You must stand straight and true with your spine erect. You must understand what it means to suffocate him with a pillow, then kill him. There is nothing else. Most people trying to learn strategy do not understand this for some reason. They think that countering or evading or running is the way of strategy. It is not. Early on in training, your teacher must impart this wisdom to you. If he does not, perhaps he is the wrong teacher for you if you truly wish to learn the way of strategy. The true warrior is unflinching in his devotion to studying his craft. If you are fortunate enough to have never had this vital concept drummed into your head, consider yourself lucky for having it done now. It is a terrible thing that many other schools do not understand what the way of the warrior really is. Many warriors have had to take a hard look at reality when it became evident to them that they were not being led to the path, but perhaps only being led down the path. Schools that teach odd methods of using the long sword. Clever people do not understand temperance of spirit. Clever techniques shown to beginning students in other schools are very dangerous to the unformed mind. They seek to trick people by dancing and jumping and switching hands. This is stupidity and does nothing to enhance the reputation of the warrior. It is because of these people that commoners despise the warrior mentality, for commoners are not shown the true way. Clever people teaching that no one can beat them because of their superior technique. They belittle others who have different methods. They try to bully others into following their way. Some teachers think that by impressing students with their own skills, they can convert them to their way of thinking. These are terrible things to do, and I despise those who practice this method of teaching. They do not understand the true way of the warrior. They have probably not had experience in real battle and only play at what they do. In the heat of battle, the spirit of the thing itself will reveal its disgust towards those who practice in this manner. They will lose the way and be beaten in fights. There is only one way to kill the enemy. The way is to kill the enemy with one stroke. Killing by cutting is totally different from killing by slashing. Slashing being every other way to kill besides that of the warrior cut. Anyone can kill anyone for any reason at any time. It is foolish to think that someone who is untrained cannot kill. The way of the warrior is to kill as a way of being and not merely for the result itself. Strategy teaches the appropriate manner in which to kill correctly and without hesitation. The intense training that a warrior goes through teaches the simple lesson. Being known as a warrior is a very substantive thing. It is never taken lightly, especially by other warriors, if they are true warriors and not merely braggarts from another school or system. To practice your craft as a warrior takes a tremendous amount of devotion, and you must understand the need for frustration while you are training. Few can understand this to their discredit. You absolutely must believe in what you are doing, and you must practice it with the intention of laying down your life for it, if the spirit of the thing itself requires you to do so. The reason true warriors are fierce is because their training is fierce. Ponder this over and over. Regardless, you must maintain the proper form and balance while training and while not training. Maintain respect for others and respect for your own way. Not to do so is moronic. Maintain the proper attitudes towards the way and permit the way to proceed through you based on your resolve. The method is to go straight in and is undoubtedly the hardest method to master. That is why you must constantly practice and not merely take up the sword as a novel way of spending time. You can, of course, if you only want to make a hobby out of attaining perfection. That, however, is not the true way. Incorrect carriage and warrior attitudes. Do not bear false attitudes. False attitudes work best where there are no enemies. In real situations, they can get you killed very quickly. The true warrior does not go around telling everyone he is a great warrior. He permits his actions to govern others' responses. My idea of attitude is based on the principle of the true way, which is not to allow it to be perceived by the enemy. Blatant attitudes such as fancy armor, engraved weapons in battle array, and the like are an attempt to throw an enemy off balance. Yet these things only impress the untrained and irresolute. The warrior's attitude is that of taking the lead in a fight and winning with resolve. You must understand this basic lesson. It is important to perceive the enemy's attitudes regardless of whether you deem him to be correct or incorrect in having them. You should not judge the enemy's attitudes needlessly. What you should do is use them to your advantage by throwing him into confusion and making him lose balance. This can be your way of scaring him and forcing him to act according to your needs. It is stupid to try to beat his attitude with your attitude. This is another form of bragging and results in hesitation on your part in going for the kill, the reason you are there in the first place. The warrior always wants to control the situation in a battle. This is why it is necessary to practice diligently to attain the consciousness required to maintain this attitude. It is required of a warrior that in order to follow the true way, he be aware of all possible conditions prior to the actual battle taking place. In this way, that he may not even have to do battle because of his superior intelligence based on perception and intuition. It is possible to win a fight without ever having to go into combat. You must understand this. Bearing an attack well, even when you are superior in physical strength, is not the proper attitude for the warrior to follow. Try to understand this. If you wait for the attack, defend against it, and only then go in for the attack by parrying and striking. You are making extra work for yourself. Moreover, there is always the possibility of missing the block. If you approach the enemy with the attitude of defeating him without delay and with utter resolve, then you will certainly be in a better position to finish him off with quicker timing. When you go into an attack and are committed to destroying the enemy, you do not have to worry about being cut in return, and therefore you won't be. The spirit of the thing itself is what carries you through to a successful resolution of a fight. When you are returning the attack to the enemy after he has attacked you, you are permitting your rhythm and timing to be controlled by him, regardless of how well you fight. You are on the defensive. You should strive to be neither offensive nor defensive. These ideas can force the mind to stop in its flow of consciousness and get you killed when you are in a fight. I strongly urge you to understand this part of my strategy if you are on the path of the warrior. Fixing the eyes in other schools. Some teachers say that you should always stare at the enemy's weapons or at his eyes or at his feet. This is not a good idea because it fixes your spirit in place and it is easily read by an experienced fighter. It also limits your abilities to be flexible under any circumstances. It takes the naturalness out of your actions and weakens your resolve. If the football player constantly watches only the football, how can he ever expect to run with it down the field and score? If the master musician looks only at the music, note for note, how can he ever play with the soul required for the music to make sense? It is the same with the warrior. One particular part of the enemy should not be stared at. This makes it too easy for the enemy to deceive you and interfere with your timing and rhythm. You should favor the broader view. Your eyes should be fixed on nothing. Your stare should be unfixed. When I find another man, I look through him and think only of making the hit. I have no preconceived notions of which target is the one to aim for. I let nature take its course and permit the spirit of the thing itself to express itself through me and make me the victor. And I never forget to acknowledge the spirit after I have won the fight. This is the true warrior's way. With experience, you will soon learn to ascertain the strength and speed of the enemy. This will enable you to figure out his intentions and determine his skill. Look through the enemy, look through his heart, look beyond his very being and degrade him entirely with your spirit. This is what you must concentrate upon. The spirit of the thing itself will guide your hands accordingly and help you to beat the enemy in a fight. Always take the broader view of the entire situation, both when you are in a fight and when you are not. Do not concentrate on details. Keep only one thing in mind. That thing is to beat the enemy. In this way, your spirit will continue to grow and you will always be conscious of your surroundings and the situations that appear. Concentrating on one cart when you are crossing the avenue means that you have left yourself open to another cart hitting you from the other side because you were concentrating on details and not the entire situation. The same applies to fighting. If you constantly gaze at the enemy's feet, it will be easy for him to strike you with a punch. If you concentrate on the hands, he will kick you. If you concentrate on the eyes, he will easily fool you into thinking one thing while he does another. Always look to the mountain and beyond. This way you will be aware of the broader picture and can easily win if you have the resolve to do so. The stupidity of fancy footwork. Do not attempt to be clever with your feet. Many attitudes of footwork seem to be simple wastes of time because their only intention is to get your attention and throw you into confusion. Likewise, when you shuffle your feet or make quick little jumps to the side, or make any useless moves, you lose your advantage against a skilled fighter. Besides, you're not there to dance. You are there to kill the enemy. Again, the emphasis is on not relying on a specific walking or moving pattern. The definitions of the types of walks reflect their users and are to be considered as indicating the spirit in which they are used. For example, a jumping pattern indicates a jumpy spirit, don't you think? When I move in on the enemy, I move with resolve and sure-footedness. I walk in as naturally as if I were walking in the street. I do not differentiate between walking in to attack or walking into the house. My strategy does not permit change in composure, regardless of the ground being fought on. By being sure-footed, I can overcome most obstacles in my path. This way I do not lose my rhythm. When I make changes in rhythm, it is based on the enemy's rhythm, and by moving fast or slow, I close in on him and kill him. Why would you want to change your basic attitude towards life simply because a new set of events is occurring? If you take the time to change your methodology in midstream, your spirit has to catch up. Regardless of how quickly you move, eventually you are going to have to come back to your natural state. So why leave it in the first place? You must maintain a natural rhythm and a natural timing. Anything that you add to or delete from this naturalness will cost you the advantage when you are proceeding to destroy the enemy. Moving in a natural gait will afford you the opportunity to move either fast or slow and will thus enable you to follow the enemy with a much steadier attitude. Your spirit will remain intact and you will be able to defeat the enemy. How to think of speed. Some schools think that speed is all that is necessary to win fights. If you can make a fast slash and win, all the better. I do not agree with this idea and think that it in fact slows you down. You are again relying on an external concept. What is speed anyway? Speed is relative to the situation in which you are involved. Being fast or being slow has to do with speed. Quickness is what you want in your spirit. A quick spirit is able to overcome any apparent speed with which an enemy is coming at you. Quickness gets inside of speed and enables you to control the situation by killing the enemy. When you advance quickly and get immediately to the point. Your speed is dependent upon the speed of the enemy. You adjust yourself accordingly and do not think in terms of being faster or slower. Quickness is the thing that counts. What is more, if you are constantly moving fast, you will have no time to maintain your poise and timing. Your rhythm will start to get out of control because you will tire and start to move slower, perhaps without even realizing it. When you are skilled in the art you have chosen to study, you will have the true understanding of rhythm and timing necessary to perform flawlessly. Perfection can only be based on true calmness within the soul, and any attempt to radically change for no good reason will throw the entire attitude of calmness out of harmony. Move naturally and gracefully. Execute correctly. Think about this. Quickness is the thing on which the spirit relies. Speed, not being necessarily good, can only cause you to lose your control. If you move too fast or too slowly, you may give your enemy the advantage necessary to beat you. Always move naturally and calmly, with great resolve to destroy the enemy. In a large battle with many men, everyone will move with their own rhythm and timing. Not being influenced by others is essential if you are to be able to beat men in a fight. You absolutely must train diligently in this regard. When you are on your own self and not concerned with the notions of others, you will be in control of the situation and in control of the enemy, and the movements with which he may or may not attack you. Keeping calm is essential to not losing sight of your main purpose in a fight: to kill the enemy quickly. Inner and outer attitudes in other schools. The difference between a warrior's victory in combat and an exemplary artistic performance is that in art, the outcome does not include the death of a dancer in the dance or the death of the musician in the performance. While in combat, the reality is that the outcome is decided with the death of the enemy or yourself. I do not like inner and outer attitudes. They are detrimental to understanding the true nature of the universe, which is oneness. Why consider yourself with definitions of what you think the spirit of the thing itself should be doing? When I teach beginners, I can concentrate on developing technique and make little mention of deeper principles. They are not necessary, and intellectual exercises tend to limit the student's progress. Only later, when they are able to understand that fighting is not an intellectual exercise, although the aesthetics involved in executing specific techniques call for a strong and intelligent spirit, will I go into the deeper meaning of things. If you concern yourself with an inner and an outer attitude, You will only interfere with your timing and your rhythm. It is best to concentrate only on killing the enemy and attaining perfection in yourself and your technique. Endnote to the Book of the Wind. It is not wise to criticize another's way. There are reasons for each man to have his own. Ask someone a question and he will give you an answer. Ask the same question to another and he will give you a different answer. There is no need to examine the doctrines of another school of thought until you have come to terms with the doctrines of the school you are studying. In the very beginning, you seek a teacher. Then you come to understand the realities of what it is you are studying. When you feel that something is missing, or that you are not learning anything further, you must of your own volition seek the next level of instruction. There is no such thing as yin-yang. This is not to say that yin-yang does not exist. So ends the Book of Wind. The Book of Nothing. Sora. My way of strategy is recorded in the Book of Nothing. The spirit of the universe is an emptiness which is nothing. Men can have no understanding of this place. It exists and is, but yet it is not. If you know something, you know something. If you do not know something, it does not exist in your world. In the universe, nothingness is not a thing that is true, and not a thing that is not true. When men of the world look at things with the wrong perception and do not understand what they see, they say it is the place of nothingness. This is incorrect thinking. The idea that men who study strategy and do not understand nothingness do not, therefore, understand their craft is not correct either. Everything is revealed to all men as they desire it to be revealed to them, by their own definitions alone. If you hope to understand my strategy, you must study as many of the martial arts as you can, and never veer from your chosen course. Your everyday practice, as it accumulates, will eventually reveal true nothingness to you as the spirit of the thing itself. When you have truly understood the universe in relation to your art, and your art in relation to the universe, you will come to understand nothingness. This may appear to be a very difficult concept to understand, but it is quite simple. Do not take anything for granted, and do not put emphasis on the things of men. In this way, understand my strategy. No matter how hard you study, if you do not become one with the art you pursue, you can never be truly one with the universe, and the spirit of the thing itself will always elude you. Things will never appear to be what they truly are, but if you look at things with no attachment to them, you will come to understand your place. The work is more important than the worker. When you come to see things in a broader perspective, taking nothingness to be the truth, you will see truth as nothing. There is virtue in the universe, but it should not be confused with good and evil. Wisdom exists, principles exist, and the way of the warrior exists, but spirit is nothingness. Based upon my own understanding of the way of the warrior and my own understanding of the universe, I am presenting the entire matter of the Book of Nothingness as one idea. Let me repeat it again. The way of the warrior is based on nothingness. Nothingness is not to be understood as a thing, because it then would be based on a conception of something, which would not be no thing. The Zen term for no thing, which is the closest we can come to defining no thing, is called mu. To understand mu is to understand nothing. It is essential to be careful with intellectual definitions at this point. The issue is clear, and I explain it as well as anyone else. Even without the literal translation of my Book of Five Rings, you can come close to understanding nothing by realizing that there is nothing outside of yourself that can ever enable you to get better, stronger, richer, quicker, or smarter. Everything is within. Everything exists. Seek nothing outside of yourself. If you understand what exists, then you can understand that which does not exist. This means that although it is impossible to know that which does not exist, it is possible to know that if anything is anything, then everything is everything. In the way of the warrior, there is no such thing as thought. The spirit of nothingness means that there is no such thing as relying upon anything at all outside of your individual mind. Zen masters use little stories to bewilder their students. These are called koans. They are specifically inane to their presentation, but when students come to understand nothingness, they will also come to understand the koans. I could go on and on forever in trying to explain nothingness, but that would be exactly the wrong way to approach it. The Zen point of view suggests that you would stop all conceptual thinking. Stop thinking about what you feel is right or wrong. Quite frankly, because all the universe is simply nothingness, or mu, there is no reason to pursue any attempt at perfection. Perfection is all there is, and when you come to realize this, you will have to understand my way of strategy and the way of the warrior, at which time you forget about it and just be it. Best to have it put this way. Simply be. You are the spirit itself. Thus ends the Book of Nothing and the Book of Five Rings. Thank you for your time. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.